James Lennis, this is number 209 gin, based here in San Francisco, such as myself. I'll tell you all about this gin, so stay tuned. So this is founded by Leslie Rudd, and I understand the story goes that he was in a stone barn and he was intrigued by this old faded lettering that said Distillery, registered distillery number 209, and it's pinpointing back to an era that I believe was pre-prohibition, and so that was something that he founded and created this brand of gins. It's based here in San Francisco, south of Oracle Park, Pier 50. Now they do produce barrel-aged gins in addition to this gin. It's a Chardonnay barrel, as well as Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon. They do a kosher gin as well as a kosher vodka. So the botanicals are juniper berry, bergamot orange, lemon peel, cardamom, cassia bark, as well as coriander seeds. Now, in this particular review, I'm going to point out, it's probably obvious, but sometimes, just sometimes, I'm not just going to say, verbatim those specific materials or those botanicals that I just mentioned, both on the scent and the palate characterization. Because sometimes, just sometimes, and oftentimes, it is the alchemy and the art of distillation. And it's also the picking up the senses, which pick up something different, and it's based on all those combinations, so you can get an evocation, a distinction point that is different than the original materials. The reason I, bringing this all out is simply I had one viewer say there was no bergamot orange on that particular gin. Yes, I get it, I understand, but my perspective is. Both on the scent and the palate. I don't even recall which gin it was, but to me that was the evocation, and that is the whole art and science. Just because I'm tasting a wine, for example, and I get a characterization of raspberry, does that mean there's raspberry on the wine? No, of course not. It would be too elemental, too uninteresting if you just said it tasted like grapes. Great, that's wonderful. It doesn't tell me anything about the wine. You're just telling me the obvious, and I get that. And I understand that. I'm really pointing this out because, yes, I think that, I've had people ask me, is there really, cardamom in that wine? No, there isn't. And it's also, just to stand back just a moment and carefully and, consciously and sensitively explaining that, no, the only input here is wine grapes. And so I think that's, the point out here. So I don't mean to go on a big diatribe, but I think it's important to call out, bring out, and, to really honor the distillation art form. So on this, if I didn't know the materials, here's what I would say on this gin. The scent characterization is evergreen forest, sandalwood, clove, and saffron note is really, a very nice point here. And so it's just going to be like the Old Raj saffron characterized gin? Not necessarily, but a hint of that. So here we go next with the palate characterization. So the orange peel, Meyer lemon zest is coming through, a bit of pepper, nutmeg, and allspice on this. This is a 93-point gin out of 100 points. I'm using actually on this is, sometimes I use a port wine glass, but on this I'm using a champagne glass because I think it's, probably the best vessel to be tasting from. It's a smaller format, so I think it's giving a good characterization in terms of scent. And I did test this out between what I do taste often with spirits is a dessert wine glass. In this one, this came out to be the best characterization of the distilled spirits that I was sampling. So this is a 21st century style gin from San Francisco. And so, often I compare this against a gin that's going to be a London dry gin. And there are just different characterizations. And yes, they may contain some very similar botanical signatures, but sometimes they come out to be very, very different. So the London dries are going to be expressly different, in my opinion, much more juniper forward than this particular gin. This is going to be much more spicy and much more heavier on the pepper content than you might expect from a London dry gin. So that's my characterizing point between those two different styles. So again, 93 points out of 100 points. More information on the producer will be listed down below. So please leave your questions and comments. I'd love to know your favorite gins, your favorite cocktails, and also put a recipe down below for the Paper Plane, which I think is a fantastic cocktail, either from gin or whiskey. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your support. More reviews to come. You'll find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and WordPress, as well as my podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Stay tuned for more reviews to come. Santé.